Hello again and welcome to the Warhammer 40K Genestealer cult video. So, at this point in time, a lot of information has been revealed about the Genestealer cult codex for Genestealer cult 8th edition. And we pretty much know what the army is going to be like now. There's plenty of videos out there which go through this book page by page. Those lucky jotters that get an early copy. There's even a battle report up by Tabletop Tactics with Genestealer cult, although they don't have the new models, which is fair enough. You can't even get them yet, but they do show off some of the new rules. There's a few videos of people literally going through it page by page. But sort of the problem I've noticed, especially on the Tabletop Battle Report, which is obviously very high quality, and for those of you that don't know about them, go check them out. They're great. Is they're non-Genestealer cult players which are kind of reviewing the book, like Striking Scorpion 82. He's again another fantastic, massive YouTuber. I look up to that guy a lot. But he's not a Genestealer cult player, so when he's going through the codex, he sometimes doesn't quite identify things the way that a cult player's brain would. And same with Tabletop Tactics, the way they did things was probably actually a bit of a weird way of doing it. It made sense if you're a normal 40k player, but what I'm seeing with the cult now is that they don't play like a normal 40k army at all. You've got to think completely backwards with these guys. And so I've spent, some of you may be wondering why haven't I made a big comment on the cult, because this information has been coming out dribs and drabs, and I waited, like the cult, I bided my time, and I waited until we had a much clearer picture. Okay, and what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you my impression of how the Genestealer cult codex is going to work, and then you'll kind of, if you're a Genestealer cult player, you'll kind of have a week to digest what I'm saying and see if you agree, and you'll kind of have, and if you do, you kind of have that you'll have that time period to mentally adjust. So when the Genestealer cult codex drops, you'll be able to hit the ground running. And you'll know how to play the army, and you'll hopefully avoid a lot of the teething problems. Now, of course, we don't have the codex yet, so even though we've seen like 99.999% of the information out there, we don't have everything. So this is always subject to change. I want to put that disclaimer out there, but I'm pretty confident. So I'm gonna do this video is essentially going to be Genestealer cult. First impressions, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Hopefully I'll remember to put that as the video title. So, the army, as we know it, is dead. I'm going to go out there to that. That doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing, but Genestealer cult, as they have played through the entire of 8th edition up until this point, is now completely dead. Okay? You're going to have to get your head completely relearning the Genestealer cult now. There are some fundamentals, but there's a few things here which are key differences and how into the index. Okay, so we'll start off with the good. Okay, which is so the cult ambush table has changed completely, and I think overall this is an improvement. Now, when I first saw it, I didn't like it. When I first saw these cult ambush their system, I didn't like it. But after I've had time to digest it, I think it's really powerful, guys. Really, really powerful. So, for those of you that don't know, the old style of cult ambush, you rather than deploying a unit on the field of battle in your deployment zone, you could put it into ambush, and then when it arrived via reserves, you roll a dice. On a 1 to 6, you got a different ambush result, and some of them were terrible. Like 1, if you roll a 1, your opponent picks 2 sides, and then you roll a dice, and on a D, 1 to 3, it's the left side, 4, 5, 6, it's the other side, and that's where units appear. So your opponent would just choose like 2 completely rubbish sides. So basically, like, the first 3 options on the table were complete trash, and 4 wasn't great. 4 was you just deep strike like 9 inches away. 5 was you deep strike 9 inches and move d6, and 6 meant you deep strike 9 inches away and then get to move your full distance. So that was fantastic, because if you got a 6, you basically were guaranteed that charge. And so what that obviously meant, and you had primuses, and primuses could really basically guarantee you to get that 6 or at least a 5 or 6. The primacies were really, really important. That's completely gone now. Okay, and obviously what that meant originally was that you wanted to use Cult Ambush to deliver close combat units. It wasn't reliable, but the whole point was that in every single way the Cult Ambush got you close to the enemy, apart from if you got a result of a 1. Okay, every single way. So, it wasn't great, but it did get you closer. It was a bit unreliable, but you could game it so you could get like 2 units that were guaranteed to get that that charge off. Okay, like that turn 2 charge. Now it doesn't work like that at all. So now, guys, basically you have a choice. You can either... Cult Ambush has 2 modes. Mode number 1, you can set up underground. And what underground means is you basically deep strike as per normal. You can, starting from turn 2 and turn 3, you can deploy your units as long as they're 9 inches away from the enemy. Standard. And the second one is this new blip token system. It sounds complicated. It's actually incredibly simple. For every unit in your army that isn't underground, you get a blip token. And then it's a little round like radar blip. And then rather than deploying any units whatsoever, you just deploy a blip. And then so your opponent doesn't know what's in your deployment zone at all. Now they have to stay within your deployment zone. So your opponent knows there's an enemy out there. They just don't know what's out there or where. And there are ways of you getting like false blips. So your opponent might think there's like 3 enemy units in front of them. And then they're just false blips, and you just take them away, and then the enemy is set up against something completely pointless, which is good for obviously tricking your, wasting your enemy's movement phase, moving against units that don't exist, or making him. Well, that's basically it, or just tricking, just tricking your opponent. They're very good. And there's ways you can move the blip. So your opponent might be like, I'm going to move up to you, and then I'm going to attack your units that are going to attack these blips, and then you go, well, actually, I'm just going to move these 3 blips away. Now, so what happens is when your opponent, at the end of if you go first, you reveal your blips turn 1. At the very beginning of your move phase, so your units can still move after they've been revealed, if it's your turn. If your opponent goes first, then the blips are revealed at the end of their movement phase. So they move. So that's the key difference. So if it's your turn, you get to reveal and act as normal. If it's the enemy's turn, they don't know what they're facing when they move up against you. And the second really key part about these blips is the enemy is not allowed to move within 9 inches of them. So if you string 3 false blips out across the front of your deployment zone, and then 3 of those blips that you can move, then essentially you spread those out equally across the deployment zone. You create a 9-inch anti-movement buffer zone across your entire deployment zone. So your opponent has to stay 9 inches away from your deployment zone, which is incredible. So people are saying, well, this new system, it really, hinders you getting a turn 1 charge. Yeah, it hinders your opponent getting a turn 1 charge. Because hear me out, guys. Hear me out. So your opponent has to stay 9 inches away. Not just deep striking, he just has to stay 9 inches away from the blips. All the blips are revealed at the end of turn 1, but in turn 1 movement. And so what you could do is you could have loads of... but the key thing here is you don't have to decide what unit is specifically on each blip. Those blips just represent something in your army. Anything you want. So you might string your blips out in a certain way, and then you realise, your opponent's sort of... They'd never do this, but your opponent would have like all his anti-tank on his left and all his anti-infantry on the right. Or he zooms a load of bikes up into your grill, and you're like, okay, well, I don't want my important units getting tied up and getting battered in close combat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have these blips at the front. I'm going to reveal them to be neophytes, sacrificial, bare bones neophytes, or brood brother squads. Good luck. And all the units behind these, yeah, they're actually my important units. Or if your opponent's gunlining, what you can do is go, well, actually these blips that I want on the very front lines, These are all going to be my trucks. So it's really flexible. So not only does it allow you to screen, it also allows you to pick what you want to fight. So if you want if your opponent's got some sort of stupid Death Star unit coming down at you, and you're like, I don't want to face that shit. I don't want to face it. It's going to tear apart my Aberrants. It's going to tear apart my Metamorphs. And what you do is you simply go, all the blips here, I'm going to say, are Neophytes. And they're going to pop up with the Patriarch, and so your Death Star is going to waste its entire game fighting through tar-pitted in Neophyte, in unshakable Neophytes. That's what I mean. So like, so it's pretty cool. So either the things are going to be popping up underground, or the things that aren't underground are going to be blip tokens. So it's really cool, really flexible. Right. I've gone on about that a bit too much. I think everyone knows how the blip tokens work, but it's cool. Tactical flexibility allows screening. Last thing I want to say on the blips, one really sneaky tactic I've come up with is you string your blips out so they're on the edge of your deployment, the false blips and the one that you want to move. So you string those out in the front of your deployment zone, so your opponent's assault, this is if you're facing an assault army, so your opponent's assault units have to stay 9 inches away. Then 3 blips go away, and then you put the rest of your units, the rest of your blip tokens, the rest of your army, an additional 3.1 inches behind. Now, why is this important? Okay, why is this important? Because what it means is your opponent is then 12.1 inches away from any of your units, which means he cannot get a turn 1 charge. But if in your turn 1, you just move forward. If you've got guys in trucks, you get to move out 3 inches and move 6 inches. You get to move towards the enemy, and you're probably going to have like a 3-inch charge. So you force your opponent to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and then you just move out and you just kill him. That's how I see the blips being used most effectively. That's how I see it. That's the most flexible way. That's how you just completely neuter enemy assault armies. So I feel like the blips are much better against assault armies than they are against shooting armies. I feel like that is the case. Anyway, so obviously I've talked a lot about the blips, but now I want to go back to talking about the underground. Now so the blip tokens I think are fantastic. They're going to be a bit tricky, but you can already see I haven't even got the codes with me, and I've already come up with 2 tactics on how to use these things. Anti-deep strike tactics, counter-attack tactics. Already got those in my brain. The underground thing, a lot of people are going, it's shit. Because it means you can only deep strike as per normal, and we don't have a lot of ways of... We have some ways, but we don't have a lot of ways of reducing that 9-inch charge, because people used to love using their Genestealer cult ambush to get like a 20-man blob of Genestealers just into the opponent's face and just wrecking them. We can't do that very easily now. But what can we do, guys? We can deep strike in shooting units. And now obviously you can only deep strike infantry or bikers, by the way. You can't be deep striking like tanks or whatever. Now, why this is so good is because why is Cult Ambush so vastly improved? Because it's reliable. The biggest criticism of Cult Ambush that I had was how unreliable it was. And how games were just won or just completely lost on a few Cult Ambush rolls. And it really just made the game, it made Genestealer Cult frustrating. Because either your opponent was very frustrated because he couldn't do anything about a blob of 20 Genestealers turning up. They just turned up and they just killed him. 20 Genestealers went through anything like a hot knife through butter, and he couldn't do anything about it. Or it was very frustrating for you because even with a Primus rolling 3 dice re-rollable, you still didn't get a 5 or a 6, and your Genestealers turned up and were fucked, and you just lost the whole game. You just lost the whole game because of one stupid dice roll. Now it's reliable. Now it makes more sense. Because the cult are not, the cult are meant to be really good at ambushing. Okay? The cult are meant to be good at it. So it makes sense that it's reliable. They planned this. The enemy moved into the kill zone. Now, 9 inches away means you're in rapid fire range. So all those... Sorry, my cat just jumped on my desk. So all those neophytes... Now you can just appear 9 inches away from your opponent and just in rapid fire range. And that's just incredible. And the thing is, why is it so good? I'll tell you why it's so good. Because think about this from an Imperial Guard point of view. Scions. People have maintained, rightly for a long time, that Scions are really, really powerful. Now, why are they powerful? There's plenty of deep striking units out there, and deep striking is not considered to be like the best tactic out there. A lot of top tier armies don't use deep striking units. They use units which can, like Eldar Shining Spear, for example, which can get a turn 1 charge without having to deep strike. Because the problem with deep striking is you have to stay 9 inches away. Scions turn that rule on its head. Because Scions can deep strike in, and they don't care about getting into close combat. They shoot the enemy. And so it's a delivery system for very, very powerful weapons. Now the cult obviously doesn't have access to things like plasma. But what we do have access to is cheap infantry. The fact that a Scion is 9 points and a cultist is 5 points means that you can pretty much get 2 cultists for every Scion, for example. Which means for the low, and because you're not spending so much points on like plasma and stuff, whilst you haven't got the damage of the plasma, that just means you have more guys. So for the low price of like 500 points, you can deep strike 100 guys in to rapid fire range. That's insane. That is genuinely insane. Imagine if all Elysian players know what this is like, but imagine if all your guardsmen could just deep strike in rapid fire range. It'd be amazing. Why is it amazing? Okay. Another reason why it's amazing is because it protects your units. Your units, your neophytes aren't going to get shredded turn 1 because guess what? They're going to be underground. And if they do get shredded, they'll be screening units that you're using just to keep your opponent back. Your units aren't going to get shredded. They're going to come in under their terms. That's what's so good about the army. Everything happens under your terms. Your opponent will face units that you want him to face. You will ambush where you want to ambush. It's all in your corner. And that's what's so good about this. Now, Games Workshop. So obviously what Games Workshop is saying to us is... Now, 1 minute. We'll get there in a second. Now, this Games Workshop has obviously thought about this. Okay, Games Workshop has thought about this because there's units like the new bikers. New bikers can call ambush. Now, those bikers come with a quad bike. So the bikers themselves come with things like shotguns and auto guns and stuff like that. But the quad bike comes with like a heavy stubber or heavy mining laser or a mining laser or an Atalan incinerator. Now, Games Workshop's not stupid. They're going to know that some people are going to want to have quad bikes and with mining lasers because they want a bit of anti-tank, and they know some people are going to want to use the heavy stubber because they love machine guns. But they also know that the only real option, if you're taking the quad bike, is the incinerator. But why have a unit? But the incinerator has a 12-inch range, which means it can deep strike in and still use the flamer. Flamers are so shit for deep striking units because they've only got an 8-inch range and therefore can't fire when they come in because they have to be 9 inches away. Not this incinerator. So you see, Games Workshop has put a bit of thought into the unit design for these bikers. They know the bikers are going to be popular. They know the bikers are going to be popular, and they've done a really, really good job with them. Now, it all comes together. So Games Workshop's not stupid. They're going to know people have built their armies up over the years with the idea that they want to cult ambush in and charge people. They're not going to completely fuck you. So what they've done is they're obviously telling you that they want you to deep strike in shooting units because your shooting units don't need to. They just come in for free, cheaply, and can get blasting away. Now, but they obviously know people are going to want to charge things, so they've added a stratagem which is 3 command points, which lets you, when you come in, you get to move d6 towards the enemy, or you get to shoot. So Again, that's quite a universal stratagem. It's kind of you're paying 3 command points to get the old result of a 5 on the old cut ambush table. Now, that's obviously very good because you're going to get to be able to move like on average 3 inches towards the enemy. You've got a command point in case you fuck that up as well. So, adds you a bit of a, it shortens that distance already. And then you get a character, I think it's called the Clamorous or the Claverous. You get a character which gives you +1 to your charge roll. So suddenly, you're moving towards the enemy d6 +1. And then you have things like the Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor, which is one of the regiment traits for the cult, which gives you, on the turn you come in, it gives you +1 to your charge rolls. So now you're d6 +2 close to the enemy. So on average now you're looking at a 4-inch charge. And then I believe if you take like the Anointed Throng, which is one of the specialist attachments, if you're within the range of an Anointed Throng Warlord with their Warlord trait, gives you another +1 to your charge. So now you're looking at d6 +3 inches. So, but obviously that's only going to affect like a cup. You're only going to get that d6 on 1 unit. So what they're saying is here, Gore Games Workshop's really saying is like you can deep strike in 1 unit on turn 2 and get a reliable charge off. You're getting a maximum of d6 +3 inches. You can get a reliable charge off. So, but obviously your other units, if let's say if all your units are Cult of the Four-Armed Emperor and are all within range of a Clamorous, then of course, you're looking at a 7-inch charge. Clamorous is the guy on the screen now. So the 7-inch charges is not guaranteed. So they're like, we've got other ways that you can semi-reliably get the charge off, but you've got one way which you really reliably get the charge off. So obviously what the Cut Ambush is saying, and they have another stratagem, guys, which lets you bring a unit up from underground 3 inches away from the enemy, but they can't charge. But you still shoot, but they can't charge. And what this obviously is saying, it's obviously if you use this on a close combat unit, you just have to sit there and just eat it for a turn, and then whoever survives will get to charge in. That's not a good way of using that stratagem. What's a good way of using that is, as people have already identified, on Acolytes. The Acolytes are really, really improved, guys. There used to be 11 points of complete dog shit. Now there's 7 points of, they're pretty good. They're an intermediate. They're intermediate option now. But one thing that makes them so good is each guy can take a Hand Flamer for 1 point. Now the Hand Flamer is d6 automatic hit, strength 3 shots. It's a d6. It's a hand flamery las pistol kind of thing, okay? So you pop up 3 inches away with these. So now normally you wouldn't be able to deep strike within range with these guys, but you use this 2-point command point stratagem, lying in wait, and suddenly you pop up 3 inches away and you can hand flame with things. That is encouraging you to shoot things. So Cult Ambush now is like 75% I want you to pop up and shoot, and 25% I want you to pop up and charge. Okay? Now some of you will be saying, but Mordian Glory, Genestealer Cult don't really hit very well. They're all guardsmen, they just hit on 4s. Well, my young little conscript / neophyte, you are correct. But Games Workshop again, reinforcing this idea, have for the first time ever provided Genestealer Cult with improved ways of shooting. So first off, the biker sniper unit, that the character that everyone was losing their mind over, he's really fucking good. Okay, he gets to he almost gets to marker light a unit. So you can, if you take 3, you can take 3 of these guys. So you can marker light 3 individual units. And how it works is you get +1 to hit against everyone within 6 inches gets +1 to hit. Unless it's bikers who are within 12, then it's within 12 inches. So what you would do, guys, if you were doing an 100 wave neophyte blast, auto gun rapid fire underground ambush where you just bring up 100 guys 9 inches away from the enemy, then you would just have 2 or 3 of bring these guys in I'd bring 2 45-man blobs, so 3 squads of 15, 3 squads of 15 with a jackal to give them +1 to hit, and a Kellamorph to give them reroll 1s to hit, because that's what the Kellamorph lets you do. if you're the Kelemorph's the gunslinger, the cowboy, right? It's the guy with 3 revolvers. He's got a 12-inch range, and if he kills an enemy and he gets 6 shots, and if he hits with each hit, he gets an additional shot, and he hits on 2s, so he's probably going to get like 10 hits. If he kills an enemy model, just as to kill a model, then everyone within 6 inches of him gets to reroll 1s. So what you're looking at here, and they're both cheap characters, they're like 50, about, I think on average they're 50, 60 points each. So what you've got is a bunch of neophytes popping up in rapid fire range. Let's say about 100 neophytes popping up in rapid fire range. And you designate a target, you designate 2 targets, and you get your gunslingers to fire, and suddenly you've got 100 neophytes firing 200 shots, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. That's actually really, really good. That's actually really, really good. And I think what your Primus can do, there's another character out there, I believe it's the Primus. If you designate a unit, units within 6 inches of him can reroll 1s to wound. So you've got all these buffs just stacking on. Then don't forget you'll have a unit of acolytes jumping up with 20 hand flames, 20 D6 strength 3 shots. So it's a lot of strength 3. It's a lot of strength 3. You're looking at like 60, 70 automatic hitting strength 3 shots, plus like 200 hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, strength 3 shots. So it's all this. What's this telling you? What's telling you? Chaff clearance. Games Workshop is giving you chaff clearance. Okay, and that's really, really important. Okay, because obviously back in the day, chaff was like the death of the Genestealer cult. So not only have we got, so that's how the ambush works. You're meant to like rise up, fill the middle of the board with like, you'll have like 40 acolytes coming. You'll have like 40 acolytes coming in, like 90, 100 neophytes coming in. You know, one of the big blobs of acolytes is going to like charge in there. He's going to get the D6 plus like 2. He's going to like charge in there. They're sort of hacking things apart. The other cultists are going to start blasting. Then what Games Workshop has done is they've wanted people to start using transports. Okay, they've been showing that for a while with reducing points on things like chimeras and stuff. Now the Goliath trucks have got a lot cheaper. Now, I don't know the base points of the Goliath truck. I think they may have stayed at 66 points. But the auto cannons are now only, twin auto cannons are now only 20 points, guys. And the heavy stone was only 2 points. So for like 88 points, rather than like what used to be like 107 points, now it's 88 points. That's a big, big drop. It's a big, big drop, guys. Like 22 point drop or something. 19 point drop, I think. 19 point drop, I think. It's just a big drop. You now can put, and that gets you one of the trucks. So what Games Workshop are saying here, and things like Metamorphs have gone down now, so now I think you can take Metamorphs for like 9 points, and you can, if you mess around with their weapon options, you can take they can be like 9 points, and they can get 5 attacks each, so you can take 2 of the Metamorph Talons now. Each one of them gives you +1 attack, each one of them lets you hit on 2s, and you can take icons, so rerolling 1s, and you can get these guys up to strength 6. So that's not bad at all. Or you can take things like the Metamorph Claws and stuff like that. But anyway, Metamorphs are now genuinely viable units. So what Games Workshop is telling you is, I want you to be flooding the board, the middle of the board, with cheap cultists. And then I want your real units, your aberrants, your metamorphs, more acolyte hybrids armed with like rock saws and stuff. I want maybe your pure strains. I want these units. I want your main damage dealers to be moving up turn 2, moving up in the trucks, and your opponents can be so your bikes. I want your bikes to be. They've got 14-inch range. I want them to be moving up, and I want you to turn 2, flood, to put your enemy in a catch-22. You flood the middle of the board with all your neophytes. You're going to do loads of damage to him with all the rapid fire and all the buffs. You're going to do loads of damage to him. But then, potentially you're going to get a turn 2 charge off with all the guys that are inside your trucks. And if not, it's definitely coming turn 3. So your opponent then has to be like, well, fuck, like, do I kill all the neophytes? But if I kill all the neophytes, the acolytes that are like rampaging through my lines, then turn 2, turn 3, you know, at most by turn 3, I'm going to have all these aberrants and metamorphs and pure strains, the ones that actually are the main men, they're going to just tear me to pieces. And they will tear them to pieces. So it really puts your opponent in that catch-22. Trucks are cheaper, so now they're a viable delivery system. Cult Ambush is more reliable, but you generally start further away, and it's a little harder to get those charges off. But you can do it here and there. And that's very fluffy. The reason I like... Now, do I think it's as good as it could be? No, of course not. They could have had some kind of way where, you know, your Cult Ambush lets you pop up 6 inches away or something crazy. Or, you know, everyone... You know, they could have had it where Cult Ambush was the standard. You pop up 9 inches away, but then you get to move D6 towards the enemy. Everyone gets to do that. Or D3 towards the enemy. They could have done something like that to, you know, really encourage you to put close combat units in ambush, but they're not encouraging you to do that. They're encouraging you to basically, imagine this, guys. What would the cult do? The cult would have their initial wave of guys going in as all the cannon fodder, because your acolytes are now considered cannon fodder guys. They're 7 points. They're cheap. Your acolytes are considered cannon fodder. Your neophytes are considered super cannon fodder. They're going in turn 2. They are blasting the enemy and they are distracting him. And meanwhile, you've got all these little characters, like assassin characters. You know, you've got your Patriarch in there. You've got your Primus. You've got your Jackal Alphas. You've got your Icon Wars. You've got your Maguses. All these little characters, which are all so cheap. Apart from the Patriarch, all the characters are less than 100 points. Way less than 100 points. Like, one of them's 35 points. The Medic, the Mayor, the Biophagist, whatever he's called. He's like 35 points. All these guys. And so the cultists are going forward and they're getting wrecked. And then here comes... But the enemy's so distracted by all these cultists that guess what's coming now? That's right. You've got your aberrants in trucks, unloading, metamorphs, unloading, getting those charges off. Pure strains. It's gonna be horrendous, guys. And you've got all these characters. I mean, this is the great thing. Now, the fact that everything can ambush so reliably, you can now have a Patriarch sitting in the, you know, 2 Patriarchs sitting in a blob of like 60 cultists, and the opponent has to kill every single one of those cultists before he can get to the Patriarch. He's not going to do that. Realistically, he's not going to be able to do that. There's going to be other threats on the board, and so guess what? Your Patriarch then gets to just unmolested get a turn 3 charge off. Glorious. Absolutely glorious. And that's part of the third wave, guys. Because don't forget, you know, you can bring him... So the third wave is going to be like... It's going to be the killing blow. Where you bring in another combat blob. You perfect ambush that bad boy. So you get another D6 plus 2 to move towards the enemy. Then you get to charge. And you just... That seals the deal for you. And your Patriarchs, they're going to start going in. So how I imagine me using... So that's the good. That's all the good things about the army. And one last thing, all the gene traits are generally useful. All the gene traits are useful. That's what I want to say. So how I imagine me building this army is I'm going to have a few units of bikes. The bikes, by the way, are really good because there's a strategy. Each one can take a demo charge. And the 10 points base plus 5 points demo charge, so that's 15 points, so 75 points. Each one can take a demo charge. They can move 14 inches and throw the demo charge as 6 inches. So that's a 20-inch threat range. And there's a stratagem for like one command point where everyone can throw a demo charge. Which means if you have these guys near Jackal Alphas and a Kelemorph, you're throwing 5d6 demo charge shots, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. And those demo charges are like battle cannon shots. I think they're strength 8, AP minus 2, D3 damage. They're anti-tank units. The bikes don't look it, but they're anti-tank units. That's the great thing. So that's how I envision the army works. That's the good. Okay. Now, What's the bad? What doesn't work? Okay, what doesn't work? Well, first off, they've basically nerfed the Abominant into the ground. He now has a -1 to hit on his hammer, so he only hits on 4s. He used to hit on 3s with his hammer, now he only hits on 4s, and he's gone up to 105 points. And it's like, it's just not worth it. Just take a Primus now. Take a Primus. And if you want to get more attacks, just spend 3 command points and get your Aberrants to fight twice. That's how you should do it. I think the Abominant is dead now. It's a shame. I like the model. I would now use the Abominant as a hybrid metamorph model. He's too expensive, and he's not very good. He's only got 3 attacks. Hit on 4s unless you support him. It's not ideal. Second thing I don't like. So I was really excited for the new Achilles Ridge Runner, the new buggy. Unfortunately, Games Workshop's made a complete hash of that, of the rules to that model. Completely fucked it, guys. I genuinely don't think I will be buying one. I was so excited for it, and they fucked it. Why have they fucked it, guys? Okay, so it's this fast-moving buggy. It's 50 points base, which he thinks cheap. But it's only got it's got a 4+ save. It's got no rugged construction. It's got 8 wounds. It's got a 14-inch move. So you think, oh wow, really cool. This thing's going to be like keeping up with the bikes, and you know they're going to be like getting in the opponent's face and stuff. It's like yeah, cool. So you've got this really sort of fragile but high speed vehicle, and then Games Workshop has only given it heavy weapons. So that mining laser, you can take a mining laser or a missile launcher or a heavy mortar. So the heavy mining laser is okay. It's a D3 shot las cannon essentially, but it costs 25 points. So plus the heavy stuff, that's a 79 point vehicle for the Achilles Ridge Runner, and it only hits on 4s. Now if you could take, now it does get to move 9 inches forward at the beginning. It's scout move. So you can sort of move it into position, then let it sit still and shoot. But that kind of goes against the point of the vehicle. You know, and then you could take like 3. You could take them in squadron. So you could take like 3 of these things with a sniper, Jackal Alphas, who's the biker character, and suddenly you've got 3D3 shots hitting on 3s, which is pretty good. But it's schizophrenic. You've got a fast-moving vehicle which wants to stay still. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. It frustrates me. That vehicle, hands down, would have been the perfect mount for a heavy flamer of some kind. Give it an Atalan incinerator. The clearance incinerator went up to 2d6 shots, guys, so it's amazing now. But the rock grinder only has a 10-inch move, so you know it kind of balances out. You could have the Ridge Runner has a slightly less powerful flamethrower. It's only got d6 automatic hits, but it's got a 14-inch move, so it can get up close. It should have a flamer. It's so stupid that it doesn't have a flamer that it literally breaks the model, and it's heartbreaking because it's one of the most beautiful models Games Workshop was released as a vehicle in a long time. It makes sense. It's so cool. And then it's just pointless because it's just pointless. Now it does put as I said, there is one way of making it work. You take the Jackal Alphas and you get into babysit it. Now that is the one way where I think can work, and I think that is the one thing that might redeem it. You fuck off the missile launcher, you fuck off the mortar. Okay, both of those pointless. Okay, this thing needs to have a big gun because Genestealer Cult are kind of lacking in a bit of anti-tank. If you've noticed, when you can get some aberrants in there, great. and you can demo charge with bikers, great. But then after that, realistically, you don't have a lot of anti-tank options. You can start taking mining lasers on like every single one of your neophyte blobs and get them hitting on 3s you all in once. You could do that kind of stuff. That would work. But you are struggling a little bit for anti-tank in the army. So I can see the Achilles Ridge Runner being good in that regard, but not great. I mean, 3 of them, the Jackal Alpha is going to be like 250 points. If not, no, way more, like 300 points. Because basically 80 points each. Yeah, 300 points. For 3D3 las cannon shots. So 6 las cannon shots for 300 points. Or take a Lehman Russ. Take a fucking basic Lehman Russ. So yeah, there you go. That's kind of the bad. There are other bads, guys, but so that's the intermediary. That's the bad. That's the disappointment, you know. Oh, and the map slate model, the Nexus, the one that everyone, you know, the character who has the like holographic map that everyone's really excited about. This guy. He's so underwhelming. He's a command point farm. He farms command points basically. It's on a 6+, but there's a really easy way of getting it onto 5+. Great. It's 50 points for a command point farm. It's all right. But every Genestealer Cup player with assault's going to be taking 3 battalions. And he lets you move an ambush marker, but I can do that for a command point. I can move 3 of them. Who gives a shit? So yeah, he's a bit underwhelming. So they're the little quibbles, you know. But overall, the bad is nowhere near. Isn't that bad? Like, it's very good. The army's going to be really, really powerful. Now we get to the ugly. Okay? Now we get to the stuff that has genuinely puzzled me and has, yeah, it's really pissed me off. The thing is that our regiment traits, our gene sires, our gene cult traits, whatever you want to call it, it's really restricted who benefits from it. Only infantry and bikers benefit from it. None of your vehicles do. None. And even worse, your pure strain Genestealers and Patriarch also don't benefit from it. I mean, that's just fucking stupid. I mean, to address the first point, you know, what is this? 2017 when 8th edition dropped? What is this? Every other codex apart from Space Marines and like Chaos Space Marines, the regiment trait affects every model. Okay? It's why are we being restricted? No one's gonna give a fuck if our trucks have those bonuses. There's like 3-4 vehicles, you know, there's discounting Sentinels and Lehman Russes, which wouldn't really benefit from the trait anyway, from any of the traits, because most traits lend themselves to close combat. There's Rock Grinders, there's trucks, and there's Achilles Ridge Runners. Who gives a shit if they benefit from it? Who gives a shit? Like, why? I don't get it, Games Workshop. Why? It's just such an art. I mean, it's not game breaking. Those units wouldn't really super benefit from it anyway. They would a bit, but they wouldn't, like the one that lets you fall back and still shoot. That would be really useful on things like a truck, for example. And it would be balanced because you fall back and shoot, but it's -1 to hit. So if it's a heavy truck, it's heavy weapon, so it's -2. So you're hitting on 5s at best. Like, why, Games Workshop? Why did you make that distinction? There was no need for it. Oh, but your trucks might have a 6+ invulnerable save. So, who cares? The trucks are fragile as shit. A 6+ invulnerable save isn't going to make a difference. They're expensive. The trucks are more expensive than Chimeras. Maybe they should be tougher if I take a specific regiment trait. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. So it's just an arbitrary restriction. Just arbitrary. But the main one that fucks me off is the Genestealers. Now I understand, like, you know, there's a trait out there which lets you get +2 to your charge distance, to your advance roll. So Genestealer's being able to go 8 inches plus plus D6 +2 and still charge would be pretty good, right? Yeah, that would be quite powerful. But guess what? Fucking Kraken Genestealers can do that anyway. But they can do it better. It's like, oh, we don't want the Genestealers to have a 4+ invulnerable save. It doesn't matter. A 4+ invulnerable save is nothing. You've just given Deathwatch every single guy a fucking 3+ invulnerable save. And their guys cost the same as our guys. Like, oh yeah, but Genestealers be really overpowered. I'm sorry, but did you miss the part where now a 16-point Deathwatch Marine now is pretty much always in rapid fire range and has a fucking 3+ vulnerable save all the time? Why would it matter if my 15-point fucking Genestealer, who's the same price essentially, has a 4+ vulnerable save? Why does that matter? It's so straight. And the most ludicrous one is the fact that Patriarch doesn't get it. You know, the guy whom everyone is descended from, the guy who defined the nature of the cult, does not benefit from the cult trait. But due to his Xenos nature. Say what? Like, it's just so dumb. And again, is another one of these restrictions. So now, Brood Brother rule has changed. And everyone was like, oh yeah, I'm really interested to see what Brood Brothers get. Like, maybe they'll get their own regiment trait. How about, no, you don't get a regiment trait. In fact, you lose all traits whatsoever. So you can't take, you get no benefit whatsoever, apart from you get +1 leadership. Oh, wow, thank you. I get +1 leadership on my fucking Brood Brothers. Who gives a shit? Like, it just doesn't make sense. And yeah, they've included them in the main code. So... But this is like, so not only do you not get any benefit for taking Brood Brothers, so you'd have to have some sort of mental illness to want to take Brood Brothers now. But if you do take Brood Brother allied guard detachments, now you have the command point value. Because it's taken you a lot of planning and resources to get hold of military grade equipment. I'm sorry. Like, so what you're telling me is, for the last year and a half, Eldar Soup, Imperial Soup, has had no problem just taking an extra battalion for command points. But now we're getting fucked for it. And the thing is, this is the most... So, wind it down a bit, because obviously I want to reiterate, I'm super positive for this codex, okay? I don't really, the fact that the trucks don't benefit from the cult trait, who cares, The fact that the Achilles Ridge Runner, while seems a bit of a schizophrenic vehicle, can be made useful, The fact, that doesn't matter. The only one that I think is a really stupid decision is the Genestealer's not benefiting from the Genestealer cult codex. It makes you it discourages you from taking Genestealers in the Genestealer cult codex, which is so stupid. Okay? So stupid. But apart from that, like, those aren't game-breaking problems. Pure Strains are still good. You can still take a Kraken Bomb. All this stuff is still fine. Like, it's just weird. It's weird that they've made these arbitrary restrictions. And the worst one, just to go back to the Brood Brothers, the worst thing is doesn't even affect anything. Now you might be like, yeah, but now you only get like 6 command points from a brigade or 3 command points from a battalion. Yeah, but it's halving it, rounding up, guys. No one was taking like an Imperial Guard battalion. What people were taking were Imperial Guard spearheads, which gave you 1 bonus command point, which if you halve it and round back up, still gives you 1 command point. So this arbitrary restriction actually is counterintuitive. Because the detachment that would let you get more troops, easy things, doesn't give you as many command points, and is nerfed. And the detachments which give you access to more military hardware, like spearheads, like Outriders, like forgetting Hellhounds and Basilisks, aren't impacted at all. So actually, what this rule is saying is it's actually easy, just as easy. It's no problem you getting your hands on Basilisks and tank commanders and Hellhounds. No problem. That's not hard. What is hard is being able to convince some guardsmen to come and join you. See what I mean? It's schizophrenic. So whilst it's not schizophrenic, it's just it's pointless. And what it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. It leaves a really bad, like, I want to be super excited for this codex, and I am super excited, but it leaves this fly in the ointment. It's a blot on what otherwise would have been a perfect codex. And it's weird, like, you know, we're getting hit with this, but all the other codexes which have come out before have just, you know, haven't been hit with this kind of bullshit. And 8th edition, you know, this is the key of it, guys. 8th edition was about freedom. It was free flowing. You want to take that thing, you go for it. You go, girl. You take that thing you want to take. You know, it was all about just, you know, players intended. You know, go for the fluff. There's less restrictions. Less restrictions. You know, it's fun. And now you've got a codex here, which is like, so you can do this, but your Genestealers don't get the regiment trait. It's like, oh yeah, all these cool rules, but these guys don't benefit from it. Oh yeah, and you can take Imperial Guard allies, but they're actually worse than taking your normal troops. And I don't really, you know, it's like, I feel like it's strange. Now, let me just, what do these restrictions actively encourage you to do? Okay, what's the overall effect? Well, what it makes you do, guys, if you're going for a pure cult army, is now you won't see many Genestealers. Okay, now it's the actual cultists of all varieties. Now it is truly Codex Genestealer cult, and not Codex Genestealers with a few cultists. That's the thing here, guys. Okay, so that's why. Now I've went off on a bit of a rant there, but I'm going to bring it all back to I'm going to summarize it now. I think Games Workshop was actually, whilst it frustrates me and pisses me off a little bit, it does show, one, Games Workshop is bringing in balance. Now, it's a bit of a shame they didn't do this for all the other codex, and we've had to be hit with this, but whatever. It shows Games Workshop's bringing in balance. And it really encourages you now to take cultists. So, to take actual cult units. To take, you know, now Metamorphs, which were one of the worst units in the Genestealer Cult Index, are now, they should be your go-to unit now. You know, you shouldn't really be even looking at pure strains. You should be taking Metamorphs. They're cheaper. They actually can hit. They can actually hit harder with more attacks per guy. They're fragile. But they hit at a higher strength than easily. They can be made to easily hit at a higher strength than Genestealers. They can be tailored to take on any threats. If you want to take on heavy infantry or even light tanks, you can take them with the claws, which gives them +2 strength, and then you can make them twisted helix, gives them another +1 strength, and then you've got strength 7, 3 attacks per guy, or you can take intermediary sort of can openers with the rending claws, or you can take just masses and masses of strength 4, strength 5 attacks with your Metamorph talons. Yeah, so they don't want you taking Genestealers, they want you taking cult units, they want you taking Metamorphs. So trucks now, so now Chimeras can only transport Brood Brothers / Imperial Guard units. So now everyone should be taking trucks. You know, Acolytes have been made cheaper and Aberrants have been made better. So what they're actively trying to make you do, guys, is to take cult units. Not Tyranid units, not Ashton and Latam units. They don't want you taking that stuff. What they want you taking is cult units. And there are some limitations with that. The cult, I feel, is going to struggle with anti-tank. I feel that the cult is going to struggle with anti-tank. You're going to have to really be careful with the anti-tank. But that kind of makes sense from a fluff perspective. You know, if an insurrection rises up, and you know you've got loads of guys who are armed with like auto guns, they've got homemade explosives and all this kind of stuff, like a proper like insurgency rises up. Those guys genuinely are going to struggle if the Imperial Guard decides to roll down a tank battalion into the slums. They, you know, or just to bombard the crap out of them. They are, you know, if the Imperial Knight turns up, the Genestealer cult are genuinely going to, you know, through force of arms, they should struggle against that. It's a fucking knight. A single one should be able to conquer like a fucking insurgency unless the Genestealer cultists are really clever. And that's the key to it. You have to be clever with this army. I think Tabletop Tactics put it best. It's a cerebral army. It's a thinking army. It's a brain army. And that's the key. So, to sum it up, you know, that Imperial Knight that you're facing, trying to bring it down through force of arms, yeah, you're going to struggle. But why fight the knight when you can get the knight to fight for you? You take a Magus. You take the new Relic Familiar that lets you cast powers on a +1. Suddenly you're rolling for mind control on a 6 rather than a 7. You've got a command dice if you need to re-roll something. Suddenly that knight that was such a threat, that Knight Dominus, such a threat, just turns round, puts its volcano lance into the Knight Warden next to him, or the Knight Gallant. That knight becomes yours for a turn, for a shooting phase. Or maybe, you know, this big maybe you've got another way of killing a knight. You can use the Psychic Onslaught power, which means if you cast that, I believe it's on a 6, you roll off with your opponent. So you roll a dice, your opponent rolls a dice, you add that result to your leadership. If you win, the enemy takes a mortal wound, and you go again and again and again until the opponent stops you. Now you combine that with the fact that you can get +1 a Patriarch's leadership 10, and you can get +1 leadership on the Patriarch with another character, and I think there's another way you can get +1 leadership on him. So you have a leadership 12 Patriarch, and then if you took an allied Broodlord or an allied Astra Militarum Psyker, you can cast the Horror on enemy, which is -1 for leadership. And you can use the Astra Militarum Psyker to Terrifying Visions, -2. Suddenly you've got a Patriarch which is like leadership 12 versus a Knight, which is suddenly only leadership 5. And that Knight will never ever physically be able to beat your leadership test. So that Knight takes an infinite amount of mortal wounds and dies. That's probably going to get FAQ'd, so enjoy it while it lasts, guys. But that's the point. It's thinking man's army. You can try and mining laser down that Knight. You can try and take it down in close combat, but it's going to hurt you. Or you can simply melt its brain or turn it against its allies. You don't attack the problem head on. You go round the problem. You are insidious. You know, maybe that knight thinks it's all that, but suddenly 5 Attilan Jackals run up to it, drive up to it, throw 5d6 demo charge at it, hitting on 3 rolling 1s. That's going to do a hell of a lot of damage to it. A hell of a lot. And you're going to have such force saturation that the opponent's only got 1 rotate Iron Shields. Once you draw it out of him, you just switch target. So powerful, guys. So powerful. So that is what Games Workshop is encouraging you to do. Be a thinking player. Don't be a bulldozer. Be a scalpel. If you try and bulldozer your way with this army, it might work, but then you'll come up against other players and it won't. Some other players and it won't work. But this is one of those armies that genuinely rewards you for being clever. Genuinely. So there you go, guys. There's the good, which is about 90% of it, and there's the bad and the ugly, which is like 10% of it. doesn't actually stop the codex from being fantastic. I think Genestealer Cult are going to be top tier. I think they're going to be incredibly deadly. You just got to think a different way to normal. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.